Thanks a whole heck of a bunch for clicking on my video. Can you let me know what made you click on my video? Can you please comment, maybe like, and maybe subscribe? I only have 32 subscribers. I'd like to get more subscribers, puts my videos in front of other people. So today I started my channel. I've said this so many times, but I say it in lots of my other videos, right? I started my channel to promote my book, my graphic memoir called Mom Remembers Me, about how I used my health and fitness knowledge to stop my mother with mild dementia from forgetting me. And it worked because I tricked her off of caffeine, which then had a positive snowball, and her doctor took her off all meds, kept her away from high fructose corn syrup. I forced her, tricked her, bribed her, incentivized her to drink water because she wouldn't drink water. And I meet people of everywhere, and a lot of my students who tell me they don't drink water. Well, you need water. Dehydration causes every imaginable problem. So think about keeping it simple, folks. If something's wrong, try upping your water. And then also I kept her away from gluten. So in the process, I read a lot of graphic books, and I really love them now. I wish I started reading them many years ago, and I wish I kind of introduced my father to them. I think he would have really liked them too, but it's too late for that. But I'll miss you forever, Dad. So today I'm going to review this book, Why the People. So I got this from the library. I love the library. I highly recommend the library, right? This is by Bika Feathers and art by Ali Schwed. So it's a very good book. So I'm only going to review the books that I like. So I'll share the art and some of my thoughts about different things. And I'm not sure about you, but I'm confused on governments and everything too. This laid it out really good, and she did a really good job of teaching us. And then she explains in the end why she might have skipped some other parts. So here we go. Okay, so here's the title of the book, Why the People. We went over it in the beginning. So I thought I would share some of the good art, some of what I think is really good about this book. One of the biggest things I learned from a lot of graphic books is a lot of times there's no chapters. It's just like one big run-on sentence. And this has separate chapters. I just somehow feel like if you don't have chapters, you just don't know. Just like I said, it feels like one big run-on sentence when people don't have chapters. So as I mentioned, this is a library book. So this starts off with two people stuck at an airport, and they're talking. I don't think that they told us I think they're already friends. So they're already friends because they're on the same airplane. But they have a lot of good analogies here. So the art's good. It's simple. There's colors in there. I don't really like black and white books. I know it's cheaper, but I like color. I really like color. I love it when there's beautiful colors. So I just wanted to show at the beginning what the premise is. And then we come over here showing different kinds of governments and good analogies, and really good, just a really good way of teaching it to us through thinking of it like a menu. Governments are like a menu, and which government, and none of them, there isn't one government that would work perfectly, and of course there's some really awful ones too. She never goes over communism in this because she taught me in the end that communism isn't really a form of government. It's an ideology. So she doesn't go over that. So, and then this was a really good analogy. So she goes over barriers come up that make it hard to get where you're going. Because you're going to the gate, you go in the plane, and all of a sudden the gate has some problems. And sometimes they do a random search, right? So this is really good, where the pilot's going to take them. So this was really good too, because she goes over some of the beginnings of a lot of governments and how, and it's really good, right? So this is has history had any ruler? Oh yeah, so these philosophers thought it would be good to have a very virtuous ruler, and then you'd solve problems if there was a virtuous ruler. But I always know that from studying yoga and meditation that the people that should be in power don't, because when you don't have a need to be power, they're the ones that we need in power, but those people don't run. So So I wrote myself a little note here. Has history had any ruler that was like Marcus Aurelius besides him? We know he was pretty good, right? And I've been studying some of his meditation and journaling. I journal a lot. I highly recommend a journal. Journaling will solve any problem you have. It'll help you create a flow chart, thinking about it, right? It also gets it off of your brain, and it also makes you remember it more. So, and here, so this is what I was talking about. The Chinese thinkers debated whether it was better for rulers to inspire right behavior through strict laws or by setting a good moral example themselves. But they all kind of argue with each other. So Confucius, Guanzong, Han Fei, Shang Yang, Menkes. I've heard of Confucius, I think almost everybody, but I hadn't heard of the other ones. And then the author goes over different rule. Arab thinkers also spent a lot of time discussing what a ruler should do, and they're awfully concerned with hierarchy, is what she's pointing to about the Arab rulers. And they weren't alone. Hindu thinkers agreed that strict social hierarchies were the only way to prevent chaos, but I don't think that everybody would agree with that, especially if you're in the lower part of the hierarchy, right? So here's next thing talking. Oh, so if anybody is a Malcolm Gladwell fan, his latest book, Talking to Strangers, really talks about how people always default to the truth. And I learned, taking care of my mother, that I don't default to the truth anymore. That's how con artists get away with stuff, because everybody always defaults to the truth. But I also recommend Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell to teach you a lot about you shouldn't default to the truth. So reading this section here made me think of that. So people always assume that someone's not lying to them. So there was a ruler that got in power, and he gave the impression that he was going to be for the people, and as soon as he got in there. So dictators are often charismatic populists promising to change a government people don't like. I'm trying to remember what this guy's name was that did it in another country, not in America. Okay, so then here I want to give myself a note. See, forgot to mention, a good giving person doesn't want the power, and those are the people that we need in power. So these are really good examples. See different chapter endings here. And then I told you the good analogies were getting stuck at an airport and learning at an airport. And I actually have lots of good conversations with strangers. I strike up conversation all the time with strangers. I learn a lot. Sometimes I also just want to copy certain facial expressions, even though that's really easy. I'm going to copy that in my journal, so that will also help me remember this book, right? So I'm going to copy that expression in my book. So then, and then I wrote down good dialogue. Here, we avoid that problem. I don't have my glasses on. I hate getting old, right? We avoid that problem by not tolerating religious dissent or political dissent, any disagreement at all, really. Just because you silence dissent doesn't mean that we consent. We're tired of the illusion of democracy. We want the real thing. And also, she goes over royal aristocracy. And she doesn't mention, I've read some stuff, when they keep, like King of England, each aristocracy distributes power in its own way while keeping it all in the family. And I have read, maybe way back, that since they're all marrying and having kids with their cousins, it caused a lot of problems because they didn't get out of their own family. And when they had children, when you have children with a relative, you risk that child having some problems, which could be any number of problems, right? But you never mentioned that. But I think that's a good thing for us to remember. Likes to mess with us. Yeah, sometimes people just like to mess with us, huh? Oh, and here she goes over about how people become citizens. And I always assumed, at least in America, when you're born in that country, she didn't mention this, when you're born in that country, you are automatically a citizen of that country. But that's got to be true. And then throughout history, they keep changing everything. You know, also sometimes reading a lot of graphic books, and I don't really, I'm a little scared to say this, but there isn't one single nationality that always has everything handed to them in a silver platter. I mean, if you do believe that, of course, there's always been problems with white supremacy, but that's not always the case, especially now. You would have to, some kind of government would have to be all white. And I don't think that, and then of course, every single white person that has any kind of control would have to feel that they only should stay with white. And that's not true with all whites. If you believe all whites are bad, then that's racist against Caucasians, right? There's good and bad in every race and religion. And you know what taught me that? Which, if you haven't read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, when I read that in college, and I always remember he describes being in the concentration camps, and some of the Jews that were in charge of the Jews were just as evil as some of the Germans that were over the, so there was good Germans that treated the Jews decently, and there was some Germans that didn't, and then there were some Jews that were in charge of the Jews that also treated, some of them treated them well and some of them mistreated them. And that was eye-opening to me in my early 20s, that I couldn't believe that people of the same Jewish people would also hurt other Jewish people. So that's true for everywhere, right? So I know that was kind of risky for me to say that, but I am sometimes frustrated that about what's happening. That's right. So this was good. So that's what she says here, that the color of your skin, how recently you got here, and how much money you have. So of course, how much money you have makes a huge difference. But I, taking care of my mother, I sometimes don't believe the police put my mother in handcuffs, and she was white. So if you believe that they don't do that to anybody, only every other non-white person, then that wasn't the case. So like I said, I know this is kind of risky saying this, and if you want to politely disagree with me, your experiences, but I don't get treated well by everybody I meet in the world. I just didn't get a job yesterday that I was hoping to get. So it's good and bad and everything. And if we look at everybody, and I also learned, this might be very interesting for anybody, the brain books talk about that our brains always look for some kind of pattern. And that pattern can make sense, but our brain is always looking for a pattern. And so sometimes when you travel, you'll meet two people from that area that are not nice, and then all of a sudden you think that entire country is evil. So even when I went to France, and I'm quarter French, I had only two people that were rude to me, and somehow I remembered those two people. So if you're observant of your thoughts and make sure that you're not just jumping to conclusions and thinking about, are you looking for patterns where there might not be a pattern? So two people of a nationality that are not very nice to you doesn't mean that entire nationality. And I think our brain does that. We're always looking for patterns. So if you have two of every nationality that isn't nice, and I had two French people that weren't nice when I was in France, but that's what I kind of wanted to do. And I said, I know it's risky, but please let me know what you think. You can't just complain. Oh yeah, and the biggest thing is you can't just complain and do nothing. If you think there's something wrong with the system, then start trying to change it. It'll be good for your brain to learn. So this was, like I said, this was a very good book. I highly recommend it. Thanks for listening. If you could possibly at least comment or like, and then if you wanted to subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Have a great rest of your night.